What got you into yoga in the first place?
I had a little bit of history of yoga when I was originally working in theatre, and was a part of a range of training that a very enlightened theatre director exposed us to: gymnastics, yoga, massage, various other things. And so there was a little bit of a history of it, but then I didn't practice yoga at all for 30 or 40 years, 30. And then I hit a point in life where I'd made a big transition. I'd been living overseas, I'd been doing a fairly intense, stressful job, and that changed rather abruptly, and relationship changes, and so I was fairly undone. And Canberra was where I was born. It was a home where I owned a house and where my longest and dearest friends and people were. And so yoga was a part of a period of becoming well after being unwell. And since then it's been a part of maintaining a form of health and of calmness when I'm becoming less calm. I find that I will come more often when I'm feeling a bit discombobulated in some way. I travel a lot, as you know, so it's hard for me to build it into a completely regular practice on a weekly basis or something, because I'll travel for 2 or 3 or 4 months from time to time. By nature, I'm not a religious person. I'm not a formally religious person. I don't like the kinds of prescriptions that, and you know, you don't have to look at too hard to find in all religions forms of extremism and repression and discrimination, and as alongside all the lovely things that sit inside those religions as well. And so yoga for me, or the way it's practiced here, provided me with a kind of connection with an existence as a human person, with, I use the word the universe sometimes to sort of just suggest everything that goes on around us and that we're part of. And I like the balance where the thread of the slightly spiritual or soulful elements of yoga are fairly gentle, and they're ever present in the practice here, but it's not a heavy, at least in the classes I attend, it's not a heavy element of it. So it's along with a very focused practice on relaxation and stretching and flexibility, there's also that nudging to consider our relationships with other people and with the environment that we live in, and that works well for me.
So you could say it's good for the spirit of a committed atheist.
Yes, I think that's a decent way of putting it, indeed.
Very good.
Yeah.
And well, you've been coming to NSYNC for quite a long time now. What sort of benefits do you find you get from yoga at NSYNC?
Yoga at NSYNC. Interestingly, I get an odd sense of community when you see people regularly, but you don't do a whole lot of interaction with them. But you're aware they're here for their own reasons, and there's a bit of an ebb and flow of who's here when, and also it's in the classes I attend, which are probably around the beginner's level or the gentle level, and more focused on the physical than maybe the meditative or other aspects. I find that it's really ordinary people from a whole range of, it's not just super duper yogi outfits and people bouncing up and down. There are a few people that are very physical and athletic or lithe, but predominantly in the classes I go, there's probably a good bunch of lumpy, not very stretchy people that are
it's a good cross-section of the community.
Cross-section of the community.
Right.
And maybe it's also for those classes, there's an interesting older demographic, which I think is good, that it's not only about young people and doing what they're doing, but the way in which people who are aging can maintain a physical focus and and flexibility and agility. And the other thing I really do appreciate actually in all of the classes, and I know this comes from the training and the teaching that occurs here as well, is the emphasis given to people working within their own limits and doing yoga in exactly a way that suits them. And that is, I think that's embodied really, really beautifully actually in the instruction. And so you don't feel you're having to live up to anything in particular other than enabling your body to, get what it can from it.
When you're not travelling, so when you're here, you tend to come to quite a few classes weekly. What are sort of the benefits you recognise you get from coming regularly to classes rather than, as a sporadic thing?
Probably the main other exercise I do is swimming, and so that stiffens me up. So yoga is a very good balance to that, and probably the benefit that I would find, apart from that flexibility and stretching and physical awareness, is it's a bit of a key to me to remaining calm or calming down if I've been uncalm. I can just sort of feel, I've got to be doing more yoga than I've been doing. I don't practice at home very much at all, and I know a lot of people do, and I can occasionally encourage myself to do it. But I don't have that kind of relationship to it. I sort of enjoy being in the environment where I'm not having to work out what it is my body's going to be doing.
And how do you find coming to InSync Studio? Like, what's it like?
What's it like? Okay, so I started at the other studio further up, which was an older presence of the older building. It's the same physical structure, but this fit out is newer. Very calm and simple and straightforward. It's welcoming. I quite enjoy that there's no big sense of an office presence. There's obviously a space which is technically the office, but it's not always staffed and
not in your face.
Not in your face. And that you're coming into a space where people are generally getting ready to practice or teach or have just finished something or,
Who would you recommend the studio to?
I certainly recommend it to people who are beginners and sort of my age group, or other people who have just said, where do you do yoga? You're doing yoga, where do you do it? And I give InSync a pretty good rap. Because I'm not a specialist in any particular form of yoga or devotee of, when people are saying, do you know what sort of yoga do they do? And I can't give an answer, so that's, I just talk about what it does for me and what kind of yoga I'm doing without there being a name attached to it.
Well, in terms of who you would recommend to come here?
Who I would recommend?
Yeah, are there people you wouldn't recommend? Don't go there for yoga. And are there people you would recommend?
I don't think I know enough about all of the other classes that I don't attend because I'm sure they would satisfy probably people that would have different needs of yoga than I do. So there's no one in particular that I would be saying don't go there for yoga. I don't think you do hot yoga, do you? I'd probably, if there were people who were looking for something specific, I'd probably say to them, talk to you or the people here and find out if that's actually on offer.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be suggesting people don't because, as I say, I'm not aware of everything that's going on in rooms at other times.
How do you find the variety of teachers here?
Good. Like anybody, I have my preferences. Just recently I had a class with a teacher that I hadn't had before because of, I think, Christmas and different things happening. And that person's focus was a little bit different to the regular class. And so there were some new techniques, one of which using some props that, I wouldn't normally be very much into props. And quite a complex construction of blocks and bolsters and Lord knows what. And there I was sitting in a pose I'd never been, hugging the bolster. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So, that was an example to me of, sure, you can relax into comfortability with certain teachers. But then there are others who you come across because of whatever reasons the teaching schedule changes. And you're just given a slightly different insight, often sometimes into the same poses, but done differently. And there's a slight variation in the extent to which people will integrate, let's call it a spiritual, element or thread, compared to others. And sometimes I think my assumption about that is that it's probably to do with the length of experience of the teacher, and that the more they teach, the more integrated all of that becomes for them, and their comfortability with the kind of, I say spiritual, I'm not quite comfortable with that word, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Spirit, yeah, probably. Connection. It's just I think it's something you probably learn as a teacher and become more comfortable with, and pitch where you can see it's working for the people in the class.
Anything else you'd like to share about in-sync or yoga?
In-sync or yoga? Not really. Nothing. There's nothing bubbling around, except it's a good experience for me, and I can see it is for other people as well.
Great.
I did find myself in a very early class listening to a voice of somebody chit-chatting on the floor, and realised that it was a cousin. And then another day somebody was walking in the door and realised, oh, that's my niece. And then I was talking to another niece, and she was saying, oh, that's where I go for yoga, and that person's mother comes here for yoga. And I was going, okay, all right.